So you are like a doctor of online dating.
Somewhere between like doctor and mechanic, maybe.
The vibe has shifted of dating apps. People are slightly, from what I understand about the data, kind of leaning away from dating apps. In your professional opinion, what do you think is going on there?
I guess I'll start from where we are right now. Where we are right now is that humans are more and more frustrated by the feelings of having their attention farmed for profit by multinational corporations. Kind of wild, just the insane sex differences and gender differences on dating apps. The average straight man who's 30 years old has a 0.1% like ratio, like as a default.
What? Really? Why I wanted to have you on here today is because I wanted to do a really good, solid episode on looking at the deeper analysis of dating apps and the algorithms and having a really good conversation about it. I think people don't always remember that in terms of what they're using and they're swiping, that often is a bigger, more large machine driving those decisions that's bringing the offerings of who they swipe on. So I thought you'd be a really good person to have a conversation with. But if you'd like to let the audience know your background, what you do, and just kind of describe in your own words your journey into what you do.
Sure, thank you. I guess I've been in the dating world since I was 10 years old. Every time I've gone on a date, I've tried to make the next one a little bit better. I got involved in the industry itself around 2010 when I started joining up with about 50 different dating apps. And I started coaching individuals through like how to navigate the app ecosystem, how to make profiles around 2010, 2011. And around that same year, I started getting asked by people at dating companies to help them make their products better and do competitive reviews. And so a lot kind of coalesced all around that 2010 to 2011 timeframe.
Yeah.
And around 2013, I got picked up by a dating consultancy to help me expand my reach to international clients as well. And so ever since then, I've just been consulting for the industry, helping different dating apps grow and develop, or sometimes shut down early. If it's like a prospective founder thinking about whether they should even build something, I can give them advice on that. And I've been coaching people through the whole gamut of like everything from I've never been on a date before, I have no idea how to do this, through someone who's like out of a marriage and they're like, okay, I haven't had sex in 10 years in this marriage and now I'm 50 years old and I kind of still want to date, but I don't know what my like market value is. I don't know how to approach people. Things have changed. Now people are online dating. I don't even know what that is. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of work, but it's kind of fun work because every person has their own kind of challenge that, or multifaceted sets of challenges that they're dealing with. And I have to put on my diagnostician hat a lot to find out what the problems are for people.
So you are like a doctor of online dating and not necessarily just online dating, but the dating world.
Somewhere between like doctor and mechanic, maybe, like helping people with tune-ups and sometimes entire overhauls or like replacing an engine.
So dialing it back to, you said you've been analysing since being 10 years old. I'm going to gather that you're probably quite an analytic person anyway, just because you said that. Probably like left-brained. But what do you think it was fundamentally that you found psychologically fascinating about analysing this? Was it a pursuit to be better? Was it you were just very interested about the psychology around it? Like, what was it that was the hook?
For me, I think it's that I've always had kind of a scout's mindset where I like to analyze terrain. And so from the earliest days when I got access to computers and internet, I would go on Google Earth and just look everywhere and try to find out like what's happening in my little 1 square mile town where I grew up. How does that compare with things all over the world? And so when I first joined my first dating app in 2010, my thought was, oh, like what other apps are out there? What are they doing? How are people using this? And even like in high school, when I was trying to learn how to date better, it wasn't just that I would put myself out there and date. I would ask every person around me, like rather than take on the risk of having to go out and potentially upset people and bother people and just waste people's time, I'd rather talk to people who are already dating and find out, okay, what's working well? What would you recommend? If someone just got out of a breakup, why did you break up? What were the things about your ex that bothered you? And so doing these interviews over the course of years actually gave me so much insight into how to date well.
I don't know if you're single or not. I guess you've had a lot of dates. Like, by the time you've been on one of your more later dates, you've done so much homework, so much like emotional work, so much like, you have so much material for observation. And then perhaps the person opposite you, it's just like night and day. You have all this compounded knowledge. Did you ever find that a bit of a weird thing?
Not particularly, because it's one thing to be good at dating. Like, dating really just does require a couple different skills and capacities that anyone can develop. Forming relationships is a completely different can of worms, where it actually entails navigating systemic change through time. Because, like, the person you enter a relationship in year one is completely different from the person year 5, year 10. And so, like, no matter how good you are at dating, it really doesn't matter that much when it comes to trying to be in relationships. And so it really humbles us, because as we change, there's the necessity of not just tapping into who we are, how we're evolving, but then learning how to communicate that and learning how to track that in our partners.
But just for context, I'm 27. I'm not sure how old yourself. How old are you?
I'm 37.
Okay, so 10 years difference. So I was kind of coming of age around the time of Hinge and Tinder, and that's like the mobile integration of dating apps, right? Like that was kind of starting off in 2016, like the first time I heard about Tinder. And then obviously it snowballed and snowballed. And before that, we have a lot of online dating services. Just off the top of my head, like eHarmony, OkCupid, all that kind of stuff. But I can even feel from like when I started using them properly, probably at age 20-ish, like when I was at university, the vibe has shifted of dating apps. At first it's new and there's this novelty of like, oh my gosh, there's attention and it's very satisfying. But especially as a woman, it can very quickly turn into a meat market. And then you can see like how typed messages and like a carefully curated set of images don't carry you that far. So obviously when Gen Z is experiencing like dating burnout and, people are slightly, from what I understand about the data, kind of leaning away from dating apps, in your professional opinion, what do you think is going on there?
I think it's that people are noticing that there hasn't been much innovation in the industry to help make things better. And instead, it's been a lot of consolidation and a lot of rote behaviors that dating apps are demanding of us. And it's basically at direct cost to us and direct benefit to them. And so if you think about how in the early days of dating apps, or even dating platforms, it was these long questionnaires and personality surveys that they'd use for matchmaking. That was basically 1995 through 2010. Then the advent of the mobile industry, which was around like 2010, 2011, especially 2013 was when, or 2012 to 2013 is when Tinder came out, and then Coffee Meets Bagel came out, and Bumble shortly thereafter. So we went from taking long surveys while sitting at our computers to being able to be on our phones, where we didn't have as much attention to go around, so we wanted to be snappier, we wanted things to be faster. And they delivered on that. They allowed us to swipe on people, to potentially get matches within seconds of joining a dating platform, quick messages, potentially location-based services so we can meet up with people nearby very quickly. And then around that time, these dating apps took off meteorically. They became multi-billion-dollar companies. And suddenly, well, I shouldn't say multi-billion. I think just over 1 billion is the biggest they've gotten so far for an individual company. But what happened was they got so cushy knowing that all these users are flocking in to use these mobile apps, and they started consolidating them so intensely and removing all the good features just to keep the kind of dopamine slot machine like features that allow you to do nothing but swipe. Like all they cared about was more people on board, more matches, but they didn't actually track whether or not you're meeting. They didn't track whether you were just getting stuck sending messages into the void and never getting a reply. Or if they tracked it, they did nothing to mitigate it for the end user. And so people end up spending more and more and more time just swiping, just messaging, but not actually meeting. And that's when the burnout really set in, because these platforms are only optimized to get you to come in, swipe, match, nothing else, if you even match.
So it's kind of like the typical reflection of an idea turning into a venture capitalist product, basically.
Yeah, we haven't seen much innovation in about the last 10 years. The AI boom has really started to tip things a little bit in favor of some new innovations, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily good or fun ones for the end user. What I've been experiencing is that some of these AI first dating apps really just put us back in the world of being in a chat box, just like in like early 2000s Smarter Child, or these things that are, they promise a lot, but at the end of the day, they're still showing me people I'm not even attracted to. And dating apps had solved for attraction back in 2013. So we're now going back over a decade. We're regressing as an industry.
I don't know, like, if this is a possible question to answer, but I'm going to try and throw it over at you. If you could, like, personify what's the net purpose of someone who was using a dating app service in 2006, 2016, and then now, let's just say like in 2026, for example, has the actual want and need of the consumer changed? Or are we streamlining ourselves to match this dopamine, instant gratification culture? Or do we still desire those things that were probably more probable to find in 2006 and maybe even 2016?
I'd say that the desires undergirding how people engage haven't changed.
Undergirding. I've not heard that word in so long.
The desires don't change that much because people are fairly predictable in that on average, like 40 or let's say 50 to 70% of people are looking for a relationship. And then 10 to 30% are consistently looking for a hookup or something more short term.
Okay.
And then even within that, people would settle for friendship. A lot of people are very happy to make friends along the way. And so those desires stay consistent, even though the technology has dramatically changed. So back in, let's say you were saying 2006 as our starting point, you would, at 2006 time, go onto a desktop platform. You'd usually allocate somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour and a half, making a profile, answering all these questions. You weren't expecting a hookup because that's kind of a short-term thing that's location-based, and this was not the way that early desktop platforms were set up. It was set up to find you, potentially your one and only, your special person. And so you put a lot more effort into that curation and search side of things. And then by 2016, because these mobile platforms now have your location in real time on your phone, in your pocket, they're able to point out people who are nearby and attracted to you using that mutual opt-in swiping feature that Tinder invented, or at least popularized. So suddenly hookups, even though they were maybe a latent desire among people, suddenly became a realizable fact of life, is that you could just, and I have, walked down a street on a hookup app, open it up, swipe on a couple people, match with one or two of them, message one that happens to be within a mile and say, hey, I'm less than a mile away. What are you up to right now? And you can meet with that person immediately. And so that was pretty transformative for culture because that allowed us to have so much more personal agency in how we conduct our dating lives, because we didn't have to walk into random bars and bother people for hours or days in order to maybe have one person eventually be interested in us. Instead, we could just let the app do all that work of sourcing and vetting, and all we have to do is swipe a couple times and send a few messages.
This sounds like Grindr.
I mean, it took years for dating apps to be able to successfully popularize Grindr for quote unquote straight people. Because it was very easy for men who face significantly less total risk when meeting up with people to freely meet up for hookups with random other men on the internet. Whereas for women who, I think it's like 96% of violence is committed by men. And so women have so much more to contend with in terms of personal risk and safety when meeting up with a stranger on the internet compared to men. And so making it safe for women to consider meeting up with someone in real life has been really difficult. And the apps that succeeded in this were frequently ones that either let you do things like link up your mutual friends so you can vet people more aggressively ahead of time, or link your Instagram so you can, once again, vet people ahead of time. Social logins did a lot to make it so that you'd have to, like, some apps even let you log in with LinkedIn to really showcase that you're a real professional before you get into the platform. So those went a long way. By 2026, though, the problem is nothing's changed. Like, those same apps are still around, except that they've lost a lot of their good features because the behemoths who run the industry within Match Group bought up their competitors and then stripped away their features that made them unique and made it all kind of feel the same. And then the upstart AI dating apps are not actually doing really good work just yet. It's going to take probably another couple years to refine how they approach it, but they are trying in many different ways, like of integrating AI into different portions of the dating experience, for better or worse.
It's interesting that you say that, not you feel, you see, because you see this every day, this is what you work in, is that obviously the venture capitalist model of, is it Match Group have bought out all of these like more independent dating apps, right? But I feel like now more than ever, like dating apps seem to be going off into more pocketed segments. And I think that's maybe just the evolution of maybe more demand. For example, like we mentioned Grindr, In the UK, we have one, and I might butcher its name, but it's called like people in uniform. So it's the idea that people from different services can like date each other because, you know, their schedules are a bit mismatch and crazy. There's also like another one called Field. I don't know if it's like popular in the UK. It's like more if you are looking for a hookup type of thing or a particular sexual kind of relationship. And there's like loads more that are more pocketed, religious ones like Christian, you know, dating apps and whatnot. On one hand, I think it's brilliant that people can find people of their faith, or two people who are looking for a hookup can find each other, two people who are, you know, looking for a relationship in the same service can not hook up, but maybe hook up and marry together. But then I think, is that kind of making us a little bit less tolerant as humans? I'm not sure.
I don't think that the dating apps are going to alter our, experiences as humans to the same degree as just culture itself. They may reflect elements within culture, but I don't think that they're going to necessarily exacerbate things.
Well, it's also the idea of how you read on paper, right? Because like I always say to my girlfriends all the time, all of my boyfriends, from what I'd imagine their dating profiles to be and like how they photograph, like they don't really care to stand and take like a beautiful picture. I never probably would have, I might not have swiped them on the dating app, you know, but on paper, like what we swipe is so different from what might actually be good for us in real life.
Yeah, I think that it's similar to like how you present yourself when you're at a bar. Like that may be different because you've potentially put on makeup or dressed in a certain way that's not necessarily your day to day. I think on dating apps, the thing that they can do is give more insight into other sides of your life that would never be able to show up in a chance one-time encounter with someone in a bar or
Mm.
a library or on the street. And so they do potentially give us access to way more about ourselves and one another ahead of time. And in so doing, give us a lot more insight into whether or not we'd be compatible. And that's kind of my favorite thing about dating apps in general, is that they do give us, I'd say at least an order of magnitude, more insight into possible compatibility vectors relative to in-person encounters, because you
Mm.
can learn so much ahead of time before meeting.
It's so interesting because it's one of those things of there's the data, there's what people feel, and then there's different, you know, pockets of people on Earth who will have different experiences and different cultural responses to, you know, dating apps and stuff. So I just think it's such an interesting conversation. If you were to look into the near future, what social reflection do you see people having towards dating apps? I don't like, the question is more open ended.
I guess I'll start from where we are right now. Where we are right now is that humans are more and more frustrated by the feelings of having their attention farmed for profit by multinational corporations. And so what's happening is these dating apps are getting bought by private equity firms, and almost any dating app you use probably has a private equity company owning some portion of it, which is really gross. And what that means is they want your data, and they want more of it from more users, and
We're
they
going to
want
be
it.
getting into data, don't worry.
Sure, sure. So if that's our starting point, like where we are right now, then the future probably should be one. I mean, hopefully will not be one in which all of our data is continued to be owned by more private equity companies. I think users want a little bit more return on their attentional investments. So like if you're going to put 10 minutes into a dating app, you don't want it to just be 10 minutes of swiping into oblivion with
Mm.
nothing to come from it. We want something more tangible. And so some of the new apps being built already are ones that they kind of integrate in-person events into the experience so that you're guaranteed to have something that feels real and you're not just stuck in the digital, in the virtual forever. And so I think that's been the biggest pushback that I'm noting right now.
Mm.
I don't know, when you're asking about near future, is this, next 5 years, next 10 years?
Whatever you can see, like whatever you can just like have a feeling or a pull from the data you see.
Given that AI is getting more and more capable of knowing us, I do think that there's going to be a push in the near term for more compatibility driven services. Because like the most recent AI-based dating app I saw was one that it asks your AI liaison of choice for a readout of like who you are. It asks it a bunch of different questions about like what it perceives in you based on what you talk about, the way you talk. It asks it to infer your sexuality, your financial capacities across the board. Like it asks a lot of fun questions of your AI, and then that becomes your dating app profile, what your AI kind of revealed about you. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of work in that domain, trying to get more insights into a user and consequently how to find the right people for that user using AI. So that's my guess for the next 5 years, is that new founders and even potentially some established players are going to really bank harder on compatibility because they've been utterly failing at that for the last 10 years. It's all just been swipes and swipes and swipes and maybe chatting if you're lucky and mostly not even meeting up. And so I think that
Mm.
really has to change in order for the industry to not plummet.
It's interesting, but no one really knows, right? We can look at data and predict what might happen in the future, but I think often having a feeling and a gut feeling and just kind of a pull actually sometimes does help give you a bigger picture on top of looking at the data. So it'll be interesting to see if it does happen. But on the discussion of data slash big data, it's a massive talking point at the moment. GDPR guidelines, everything, whatever. Do you think we're owed a certain level of transparency around dating apps, big data, even though that they're private companies? Because what I noticed that they do is that, for example, Bumble will release certain select data they want to share with the public, or work with a journalist to do kind of, whether it's marketing of, this is what we found on our dating app this year. But of course, we're not seeing the whole pie of the data. Like, why would they want to show us? But do you think we're owed looking at that data more when it's so much of our lives and so personally like intertwined to humans and our existence?
I think that a lot of the data is stuff that probably shouldn't go out to anyone and should be extremely securely safeguarded. Like, Bumble probably has your real-time location information, so it knows every place you've been every single day, all day, and it knows every time you're close to another user based on their real-time location information.
Mm.
And that would be really dangerous data to have in the wrong hands. Oh, oops, it turns out that BlackRock, possibly Blackstone, one of those private equity behemoths, owns most of Bumble. So they may have that data anyway, which is really upsetting.
The reason why I asked you is because one thing that has like snowballed and like dominated the internet, especially like if you get into the whole like incessant red pill community, is the whole hypergamy debate, right? That only 70% of like what you would call top tier men will get like all of the women. I don't know if you can like describe it better for me.
No, that sounds fine.
Yeah. Okay. So it's this idea that there's like the top, like whatever you define as like top tier men only will like effectively like they will like dominate the dating market in terms of being able to have their pick. I personally believe a lot of it is a load of crap, because I really don't care how a man looks. I care about personally more who they are, how they act, like are they looking towards the future. And then my friend next to me, she might be really like hell bent on like having a man who's 6'4", and I have enough friends and personal anecdotes to know we all want something different, right? But I think it's a really good idea of people looking at one data point and really running with it, and actually maybe that data point doesn't actually display the full truth of the whole world. I don't know if you can like add anything to that.
Yeah, I think the challenge there is just thinking of life from an N of one standpoint. You can go on a dating app and on day one, maybe your probability of getting a match is 0.1%. And if you do nothing else and you only are on the app for one day, then yeah, your odds are pretty bad. But that doesn't account for our capacity to learn and grow and make changes. Like, my initial profile photos on OkCupid when I first made my first dating profile were not very good. And my initial messages were quite bad. And my initial profile was not that thought out, and it was fairly generic. But within 1 month of iterative changes, I then was able to have a profile and a messaging approach that was good enough to land me a 5.5 year relationship with someone who was a very high match. And so one of the things that I think we need to really appreciate is our capacity for growth, and especially for taking feedback and learning from it. Granted, this is the thing that men are notoriously not great at. This is partly why I am able to exist as a dating coach in some capacity.
No shade.
No shade. No, but this is true. I think most people in life benefit extraordinarily from any form of feedback that they're able to take in and then implement.
Yeah.
And if you fail to do that, then you fail to grow, you fail to evolve, and you will probably just die out like every other species that fails to grow and evolve over time.
Emotional stagnation, the unwillingness to learn and develop can like be very isolating from you to like getting to your next step. I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying there.
that will destroy any relationship. It will destroy any career. Like the fact of life is growth or perish. Like you need to constantly be learning and growing and responding to changes in your environment. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us living beings that are dynamic and capable of growing. So I think what that comes down to in the dating realm is that, especially online dating, everyone starts off not knowing this context, not knowing the ecosystem, and not performing well as a result. And typically, if you're going to give up after a mere week or a month of trying, then you won't have put in the effort or time to actually learn to do it well. And so ultimately, I think most people can succeed, even on these online platforms that are relatively stacked against us, if you learn and grow and evolve consistently. If you ask, like you make a profile and then put it in front of 10 friends and say, hey, how do I make this better? And maybe you ask a coach, maybe you ask someone who can give you additional feedback, or go on forums and find more ways of making your profile better. Because what matters is not that you appeal to those top 10% of users who are already bombarded with inbound attention anyway. What matters is you find the person, one person out of the 300 million people dating online right now, find one of them who likes you. That's all that it takes for you to have a success case.
Yeah, that is very motivational, and I think anyone should listen to that because it's certainly motivated me. But I also understand in like some ways it is harder for men on dating apps just because like women do drive the market, right? I don't know if I should say this, but for example, me and my friend, I remember after I finished uni, I was sitting with him and we said to each other, you know what we should do? We should both look at each other's dating profile and just like switch around and see if everything is, you know, what the other gender would expect because we're both heterosexual, right? I think it was Tinder or Hinge or whatever I was on, and it was 99 plus. I just like, that's like what most women have. They just have like 99 plus likes because some guys will just swipe, swipe, swipe. It's just the way the market goes. I didn't realize that that is like, can never go below 99 plus. Like I thought that was just like what the button looked like. But anyway, we like swap what we thought was like beneficial from getting more matches, not necessarily the right person. So for him, I moved a picture of him with a pet up to the front. I was like, we need to get rid of the LinkedIn headshots. This isn't going to do anything for anyone. And then I was like, you can't lead with a group picture as your first picture because I'm going to think that you want me to think you're someone else. And I just don't think that's a good look. And the only thing that he did was got a picture where like my boobs are slightly more out and like put it to the front. And he was like, that's good to go. So it just kind of showed me like how differently like men and women would go around curating a profile and like what sides of themselves they'd want to show, you know. And it kind of ties into your article that you wrote on Substack, which I do want to speak about, which is why it's called Why You're Not Getting Matches on a Dating App. So I think both of those things tie together.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, just the insane sex differences and gender differences on dating apps. If you think about it, like the average straight man who's 30 years old has a 0.1% like ratio. Like 99.9%
Really?
of people will swipe left on them as a default. And
No.
that's kind of wild.
What? I don't like. No. Really?
If you, yeah, I mean, there's these services that let you upload your Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge data, and then they run the analytics on it at scale to find out, you know, of the last 50,000 users who uploaded their data, um, what do the trends look like? And they're not great. Uh,
I just feel like whenever you're creating a profile as well, like I'm doing it for what other people would want, not necessarily what I want to put out there and specifically attract, right? Like there's the difference between creating a profile that will get the most matches or creating the profile that's maybe a bit more niche and not for everyone, but will get you to the right people potentially.
And I think that therein lies one of the biggest contradictions in the industry right now is
Okay.
that if you make a profile that's designed to get you just matches, random matches, maybe people who are looking for someone attractive to them, then what you end up doing is competing with every other hottie on the internet for the attention of someone who may only be looking for hot people in the first place and therefore they don't have that much attention to give, because if they're trying to like seek hot people, they may already think of themselves as a hot person and have presented
Yeah.
themselves that way. And so all of their, like, they may have that 99 plus likes already. And so they're already in a state of not even having to swipe on people, because they only have to fend off the people who've already probably gotten a paid account and sent them a message using like a Hinge rose where you can, you know, show
Yeah.
prioritized emphasis that you like this particular person. And so what ends up happening is you're only shooting yourself in the foot, because yeah, you might get a couple more matches from people who are attentionally divided and unavailable. And it's not actually getting you closer to your end goal of meeting a real person who is compatible with you. What's far more valuable is optimizing your profile so that so much of you is inside that profile that the only person who's going to be interested is someone who actually likes you, the person, and would be really excited to meet you, the person, given your life and your experiences and what you're able to put forth in the profile.
It's so complicated, but like even when you look at the quote unquote hotties on the dating apps, or the stereotypically like beautiful people that people would naturally swipe just from a very visual level, like half of them are photoshopped, or the very, very best of the best photos you'll see of that person. You know, I also see this trend on dating apps where people will do a picture where you can see their double chin. And I think it's like a way of virtue signaling, like, look, I'm real, like, don't worry, like, you know. But then again, like, that's like a way of curating yourself in a specific way. But to get into your article that you wrote and I read through, it was a really interesting read. If you want to shout out your Substack, feel free.
Yeah, it's stevedean.substack.com.
There's some really interesting stuff on that, and you've been doing it for a while, so I had to like scroll all the way down. But in terms of like how one would go up setting their dating profile, whether it's the perspective of a traditional female or a male, in your professional opinion, what do people need to be thinking to get the best type of output in setting up their profile? If you could just give us a few gems, so to speak.
Let's say if you're a man trying to attract a woman, the first couple things to really keep in mind are that your first photo needs to convince someone that you are not going to try to hurt them, that you are a real person, and that you are in some way compelling, that like you care about something, that there's something to you that seems more interesting than not. And so, and the rest of your photos can follow suit with that. So if your first photo is you seeming approachable and kind and thoughtful and interesting, then the next photo can showcase more of your life, like make you seem real, position you somewhere in time and space so that someone can understand, oh, like this is your habitat, you know, showcase what it is that makes up your life. If you just have selfies or face shots, then people will not understand your life and you've wasted their time, because they only need to see one photo of your face to know what your face looks like.
It's also a bit narcissistic as well.
Yeah, it starts giving red flags as soon as you have more than two consecutive photos that showcase nothing else other than what you look like. So like the opportunity zone for a dating profile is having every photo tell a different story about your life. So someone can come away just looking at your photos and already have a decent sense of how you're living your life and what things you value and how you spend your time with other people, what kind of commitments you have. Like all of that should be captured in your photo lineup. And then your text should, if anything, back all of that up. It shouldn't be needlessly duplicating all of that. Like if you have a photo of you with your dog, you don't have to say in your profile text, I have a dog, because that's redundant. But you can say, I'm looking for someone to go on doggy play dates with me and my dog. Like that's a more compelling thing, because you're now giving someone insight into how they might hang out with you. So like give people those bridges into your own life at every opportunity, so that as they're looking through your profile, they can feel compelled. They can feel like there's something real here. There's some potential for what we might be able to do together. And importantly, given that over 60% of people describe themselves as looking for a relationship, you should have things in your profile that indicate the kind of relationship you're looking for. Are you looking for something monogamous or non-monogamous? Are you looking for something long-term? Are you looking for children? All of these things are relevant and important. And if you don't have them in your profile, someone looking for those things and not finding them in your profile will pass on you, because they don't actually have enough information to pull the trigger and say, yeah, this is the kind of person I'm looking for.
I don't always think people are that intentional when they say what they're looking for in dating apps, because they are trying to farm the most opportunity out there. Like I'm very intentional. Like I'm quite clinical. I don't know if it's just like my background or like where I come from, but I'm looking for a hookup means I'm looking for a hookup, or like I'm looking for something more serious means I'm looking for something more serious. But as a woman, I don't think I could like trust what they write down in their intentions personally. But I don't think I'd be wrong for being a bit more observant around that.
Yeah, I think it's good for you to be conditioned to not trust what you see on paper. But I think if you fail to see anything on paper, then you're left with nothing to work with, and
Yeah.
it becomes far less compelling an experience. Like you're still
Mm.
going to be far less likely to be interested in someone who has a profile that says nothing useful, only generic, boring shit, compared
Yeah.
to someone who actually talks about their life as they're living it and what their current intentions are, and they can do that in a candid way.
I wonder on the reverse side of like heterosexual men swiping, if less makeup versus more makeup pays off well. My like guess would be some kind of natural makeup or like whatever makes you look naturally beautiful. But I don't know if there's any data on that you can elaborate on.
I think that when you present yourself in a way that is trying to optimize for horny men swiping right on you, then horny men will swipe right on you. Like
Yeah,
that typically just works, but it doesn't mean that you're going to have people in your inbox that you want to have in your inbox. I think it's
for sure.
important to, regardless of makeup or not, to present your life in a way that gives someone a sense that you have dimensionality and that you exist as more than a pair of tits on the screen. Because men already get that from porn and they do not need more of that from your dating profile. And if they only see
No.
that in your dating profile, then what do you think your message is going to be from someone on the internet? I think that optimizing for things that get you right swipes is always the wrong move if you're not in parallel absolutely optimizing for someone who actually fits your needs and desires in the moment. You have to really put yourself into that profile and do the work of distilling yourself into the two-dimensional space that you're afforded and getting the feedback to make sure you've done that work effectively.
It really starts with knowing what you are after and trying to be transparent with that, and then optimizing the things you put on the app to really honor and reflect what you are after so you can
Yeah.
find the best thing for yourself.
And sometimes you don't know what you're after. A lot of people they're like, I kind of just want to see what is out there.
I hate
And
that. I hate that so much.
yeah,
Oh,
but the way you get through that is you ask yourself a series of questions. Ask yourself 20 questions in a row. So it's like, are you after having sex with someone right now tonight? Are you after going out bowling? And like, once you start saying no to things, then you start realizing that you do have preferences, maybe. And as
mm.
soon as you realize your preferences, you can start stating your preferences. And really, this level of introspection is not that much. 20 questions is something you can ask yourself in 1 minute's time. And all it takes is that 1 minute of introspection to get you a profile that is orders of magnitude more likely to get you the right person in front of you rather than just haphazard swipes from people who don't actually care about you at all.
Well, also, this is really good and solid advice for people to follow, but we also have the looming thing over our shoulder, which we've already touched on, which is AI. And there's also like reportings of people now on dating apps. They'll meet with someone they particularly quite like. They don't want to mess it up. They want to make sure they get that first message on point, and they'll use, services like ChatGPT or Grok to come up with what they should respond and how they should respond. What's your feelings and thoughts on that?
So I think if you start using AI too much as a crutch, that's necessarily going to be a bad thing because you lose the ability to be your own self, and that will also hurt your own confidence. It'll hurt your ability to feel authentic and to be vulnerable with people because if you're so conditioned to putting your vulnerability through some external secondary layer of AI, then that's not going to serve you well in a relationship that may be years long. I do think that AI is great for a first pass vibe check on whether or not the thing you think you're about to send is useful or good. So if your message to someone is going to be like, hey, you're so beautiful, then asking an AI whether that's relevant. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know which AI is going to give you which kinds of feedback, so it's kind of dangerous to go the route of only asking AI. I think asking someone who is in the ballpark of the person you're messaging is the best possible thing. So like don't even ask your male friends. If you're a man messaging a woman on the internet, don't ask only your male friends what you should say because they probably aren't the right target market here. Like ask other
Mm.
women who are interested in men for how they respond to such a message because they've probably received hundreds, if not thousands, over the course of their dating careers. And
Yeah,
so they'll be your best source of feedback.
that 99 plus thing that we mentioned earlier, it's not like one or two women who have 99 plus. Most women have 99 plus in their little, the little corner at the top with the matches, from what I'd guess. But then again, I think for women, it creates such like an idea of I'm not special. They're just swiping all of the time. They're just like looking at the first picture and then just deciding like a catalogue. Would I want to smash this? Or like, she looks okay. Like there's nothing personal for me, but it doesn't mean that it wouldn't work for someone else, or someone who is willing to have a more nuanced and more human approach to it. I guess what I'm trying to summarize there, you sound very evolved. You work in this line of business and you sound someone who's got a lot of emotional robustness about you. I just don't trust most men to have that, if that's okay to say.
Yeah, I think the part of the issue is that anyone can put a risque photo or even just like a cute, attractive photo on the internet, any female-bodied person, let's say, or female-identified person, and say, immediately start racking up matches. Because it is true that the first qualifier for most men when they're approaching dating apps is, am I attracted to this person? And if the answer is yes, they've already swiped right. They haven't read the profile yet. They'll deal with that later. And so I think what that ultimately means is that swipes mean nothing, and we should stop treating it as meaning anything whatsoever. And what matters is whether you receive thoughtful, useful messages from people who have swiped on you. And so the way we get that is by having a profile that gives someone insights into whether we are compatible with them. And the way we do that is by putting more of ourselves into that profile and showcasing more of our lives, more of our hobbies, more of our deal breakers. Like, make it easy for someone who has already swiped on you and finds you somewhat attractive to be able to send you something that's thoughtful and worth engaging with. Because it really doesn't matter how many likes you have. That is completely irrelevant to anything in life. It is, if anything, a red herring. It may give you a false sense of confidence, or it just may mean you're going to be bombarded by more annoying messages from people that you don't care about. What ultimately matters is that you receive a couple good messages from people that you are meaningfully interested in. That's the only thing that actually matters on these dating apps. And if you're not getting that, then you're not having a good experience.
I think it's interesting that Bumble flipped it on his head and said women message first before men. So like if you're, I don't know what they do with gay couples, but like if you're a straight woman seeking out a straight man, then you must message first to the man, which I actually like. When I used the Bumble app for a bit, I really didn't mind. But it's interesting thinking like that, and little changes like that might help and, evolve with that innovation that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that we need. But one thing that is very interesting is that Facebook, for a while now, they've kind of moved into the dating market space. So you can buy something, you can sell something on Facebook, you can keep in touch with family and friends, you can join like groups of pages that you are interested in. But now it's interesting that they've added the dating component. I don't know if you can gather from this conversation, but I'm quite critical. From a critical perspective, I don't know if I want like dating on my Facebook. It seems like I can do anything I want in Facebook and I literally don't have to leave my bed all day.
I also think that Facebook had a lot of potential to upset the dating market, and then it really just didn't go all in on that. It felt very milquetoast, kind of like it just didn't feel like their heart was in it. They started off with a couple features that were actually more creepy than anything, because it would show people, especially like seedy men on the platform, what events these women were going to, and so it would let them be extra creepy. I saw that they didn't do much by way of moderating, like who's putting what up there. So there's a lot of people who would lead with photos of their kids as their dating profile. So like they're not controlling, they're not like teaching users how to exist on this platform in a healthy way. They're instead allowing for really bad habits and tendencies to come out. But they're also serving, 3 billion people now. So they have the potential to operate at such a huge scale that it could have upset the market. I think there are some things they've done decently well. Like, you can have a much more fleshed out profile on Facebook dating than you can on most other modern dating platforms, which is nice. I still don't think it's actually getting that much total attention. What I've noted is that the average user does not respond to messages on it. And the average person does not actually take advantage of filling out their profile particularly well. And so while it is still used potentially by tens of millions of people, it doesn't mean that you're any more likely to find success there. And I haven't noticed anything meaningful by way of compatibility benchmarking. Like, you'd think Facebook, with unlimited access to so much of our data, potentially from 15 plus years of our lives and our history, you'd think they'd be able to know who we're attracted to. And yet the Facebook dating platform is still so much worse than even the Facebook recommended friends feature. Like that
Mm.
feature within just the standard Meta product, I find to be way more effective at pointing out people you might want to date than people within the dating platform itself. And so I just think they're missing the mark there.
Yeah, I also think it's like people do like the idea of segregation from like this is a dating website versus this is like a social media platform because I think people, especially women, when they know it's like a dating app, they kind of ham themselves up and get ready, maybe like myself, to be more critical and like, you know, a bit more like observational. And then when it's a social platform, they can just let their shoulders down and be like, okay, no one's going to want to send me a dick pic today on here. Well, they might do, but you know what I mean? There's that line of this is for that, that's for that, which is super helpful. But you are right. Like they have, you said like 3 billion users, 3 billion?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Not
have like,
all on the dating platform, but
yeah.
Facebook, like Meta properties encompass over 3 billion people at this point.
We're winding down to the end of the episode. It's been so interesting. But just off the top of your head, like what you're picking up right now, the data, your personal experiences, which dating apps do you think are getting it right?
There's only one that I've been kind of intrigued by in the last 5 or so years, and it's called Inni, INNI.
Any.
Um, yeah, so they're the offshoot of this personality typography app called Dimensional, which I always wanted them to have a dating component because they're already assessing so much about you and your preferences and your sexuality. And I thought that would be really obvious that they should. What am I going to do with this information if not use it to potentially meet someone who's compatible? And so just last year they launched Inni, which is their version of a dating app using these same personality inventories. And
Mm.
what I've liked about it is that it lets you have a kind of like a Hinge style profile, except whenever you're looking at anyone else's profile, you see all of these additional pieces that they've gleaned from their internal surveys that they make you take. And so they'll tell you things like your toxic traits, your love styles, your compatibility styles. And they show you that with every single user you look at. And so you're actually learning a lot about how you're compatible and why for every single person. It's not just like a Hinge or a Bumble where you see this person's like maybe 150 characters, which amounts to a sentence about themselves. Like that's really not enough to work with to know if this person's relevant to you. But on Any, you do get a lot more insights and deep insights into your mutual compatibilities. And they have an
Mm.
AI that they built right into the chat. So at any point, you can just say, "Hey, Any, like, tell me how I should be flirting with this person," and it's very vulnerable because you could like the person's in the chat with you, witnessing whatever you say. Or you could
Yeah.
say, "Any, what kind of dates should we go on, given what you know about us?" And it just gives you suggestions. And I find that they're pretty accurate in a way that I've not seen anywhere else in the industry thus far.
With the like Inni app, it sounds like Inni, like you know you've got an Inni or an outie like with your belly button.
Yeah,
You
I don't
don't
know where
know
the
that
name
one?
came from.
Inni. Well, yeah. It sounds like from what you said, like the best dating apps and what Inni is doing there is that it's giving more of a full picture with extensive surveys and like more information that people are willing to give and like build a bigger picture versus just like a few characters to describe someone because I guess people see it as an investment of their time now. Like for example, like if I'm on like one of the traditional Tinders or Hinge is very popular in the UK or Bumble, I can know a few things. I can know your star sign, I can know where you went to university, maybe your job, that stuff. But if I'm on something like Inni and it's more extensive, I know that I can like save myself a couple times worth of dates on maybe something like Inni versus Tinder where I'd have to go on like 3 dates to find out that this person probably isn't for me. Is that like a fair assessment?
Yeah, they allow you to do that extensive vetting way further upstream. You can do it at the level of first match rather than having to wait until either messaging or actually dating to figure out more about this person. And I find that that saves us so much time and energy because right now, the default case for the average person using just Tinder, Bumble, Hinge is that they're having to spend most of their time wasted at the swiping level and at the messaging level where they're kind of fighting a ticking clock where this person will be distracted by more people, more inbound matches. And if your messages don't convince them to meet you fairly urgently, then they will not meet you. They're going to potentially just meet someone else or disappear off the app entirely before they've ever fulfilled the conversation to the point of meeting. And so it just really wastes a lot of user time to the tune of countless billions of hours of human attention over the course of these apps. Yeah.
It sounds like whenever you have a dating app, and if it's going to be really of service and effective to people, with the main objective of finding people who are looking for the same thing as you, whether that's romantic or hookup, you're matching the right people with the right people. It sounds like the underlying thing you've always got to have in mind is servicing the consumer before anything, right? And I guess, like, going back to what we said earlier in the podcast, when venture capitalism comes into these dating apps, and for example in Match Group, they're not in the business of servicing people to find the thing that they need or they're seeking for. They're not consumer led, they're more profit led and retention led, and how many subscriptions can we bolster, how many eyeballs can we keep on here so they can see more ads type of thing. So that's like a really interesting, like, as a good piece of solid advice, like, try and use an app that aligns with honoring like the consumers that use it. Yeah,
and there are business models that can make that a little bit easier. Like, if the business model is forcing you to pay for attention, then that's really frustrating, because
or like gatekeeping like the people you might find hot behind a paywall.
Yeah, that's just directly at odds with user interest, and it's really frustrating. But I mean, I understand they're trying to preserve their bottom line. They're trying to make it so they don't have too many users fail to upgrade their memberships, because then they don't have money to show their shareholders, and then they will potentially crater and get sold off to yet another private equity company. So it's a dangerous field that they're in, and that most modern dating apps are in. And so I think what I really hope to see more of is creative business modeling. I think that any, thus far in my experience, hasn't been trying to force me to pay for anything that isn't strictly a fun upgrade. Like, you can learn more in-depth insights about your sexuality, for instance, if you pay for the upgraded membership. You can use the AI currently as a free user. I think you can use it 3 times total per match. And if you want to use it more and have it be like part of your conversation ongoingly, you can then upgrade to do that. So like right now, that you can pay to upgrade in ways that feel reasonable, and it's not restricting you from having a good baseline experience. And I think that's kind of the way a lot of dating apps start, before the private equity comes in and starts turning that wrench and making it so they restrict even like more and more features that are actually useful, in favor of forcing you to upgrade to actually have a decent experience in the first place.
Well, I'm going to ask you my final question, Steve. Flat out, do you think dating apps are a net positive or a net negative for their users right now? I can understand how that's quite like a question. So
yeah, I think that they are still a net positive, because they give us the ability to, without even having to leave our homes, to identify potentially from a pool of over 300 million people across the planet who might be compatible with us, and to then message them and potentially meet them in the span of a single day. I think that that's a technology that we should be incredibly grateful for, because it did not exist in the history of the human species until the last decade and a half of our lives. And I think, if anything, we're not taking proper advantage of how powerful that kind of technology is. I think that if we're just trying to be lazy about it and not have to actually do the work of bettering ourselves and bettering our relationships with technology and seeking feedback and growing and learning, like, that's the work that we have to do to have good experiences. And right now, like, dating apps are conditioning us to be kind of accepting of terrible experiences. So like, yeah, at baseline, they're not great for most people, but over time, if you actually use them effectively, they can be highly impactful on your life, for no matter where you are on the planet, finding people who might be a good fit for you at this moment for what you actually want.
We don't get amazing tools without doing the amazing work of learning how to use the amazing tools.
Yeah. Like, they are tools. They're not like salvation. They're just tools that are optimized for certain things. And if we learn to use them appropriately, then they can serve us really well.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, today. I know I've learnt a lot. I'm going to go home and I'm going to ask myself some more questions, and I might download my dating apps again or try some new ones. Just again, where can people find you? I know you've got the Substack that you've already shouted out, but all of the different socials.
Yeah, well, stevedean.substack.com is the easiest place to find my writing. And for coaching or learning about my events and work in the industry, that would be dateworking.com. That's like the fusion of dating and networking, dateworking.
I say like bring networking back. Like Gen Z are so horrible at like networking like right now because everything is on the phone, which isn't bad. Like you can network on like the internet and on the mobile, but people don't go to networking events half as much as they used to. I remember my dad going to networking events like when he was working. So such an interesting point again. I'll put all of the links in the bio below, and thank you for listening, guys.